Good morning and welcome. My name is Rich Schwab, and I have the honor of serving as the Dean of the Neag School of Education. Welcome to our second day of the Neag School of Education 15th anniversary celebration. Last night, many of you joined us to award 3 endowed professorships to Doctors Green, Plucker, and Wilson, and the highest honor given to a UConn faculty member, a UConn Board of Trustees Distinguished Professor Award for Dr. Scott Brown. What a great way to kick off the weekend and celebrate our 15th anniversary. Before I start, I would like to recognize that Provost Choi has joined us today. Provost Choi is the academic leader of the University of Connecticut and is a very talented individual and does a great job. So, Provost Choi, appreciate you being here with us today. We also have over 250 friends, alumni, students, and faculty. In fact, we had to move rooms to a bigger venue because we exceeded our expectations. So I think it's a testament to Ray and Carole and the commitment that we have as the Neag School of Education family to be here. In fact, the commitment is so deep that I see at least, I think, Dr. Gable, Dr. Wineland, and Dr. Rucker, any other emeriti professors who are come back to join us for this day. But that's fabulous. And if I missed anybody that I didn't see, okay, well, welcome back. We appreciate all that you've done for us over the years. So those that have heard me over and over again over the last 18 years know that as a former social studies teacher that I love history and I love to tell stories. So bear with me with a story of how this anniversary actually came about. Picture of the year is 1998. It's 6 months after I've started my new job as Dean of the School of Education. I was standing next door in the new business building that had just been opened. It wasn't opened in the fall when I got here. The business school was next to where the support building is next to us on campus. There was no Laurel Hall, there was no ITE building, we call it the Computer Science Building. Gamble was there, but none of the landscaping was done. The student union hadn't been redone. The Neag School of Education, of course, didn't exist. We were in an old building where the tiles were falling from the ceiling. It was a very different place. We had won a women's championship. We hadn't won a men's national championship. We were still playing football in Memorial Stadium. So that gives you a little idea of how far this university, not only the School of Education, has come in the past 15 years. You have to understand that at that time, there was a very much seniority old boys network around here. And for a new dean of a School of Education to be given the opportunity to talk to potential donors and friends of the university at the women's Tennessee UConn game was unbelievable. There was some unhappy deans of the law school and business school, to which I've always had the attitude, we're more important than them anyway, because without great teachers, they don't have any students. But it was because, and this is really important, and this hasn't changed even till today, the President Austin, Chancellor Emmert, who went on to be not our best friend as head of the NCAA in some ways, but was the chancellor at the time. It was called chancellor, not provost. He's the person who hired me. And Ed Allenby, who was head of the foundation. All of them said the most important thing a great research university needs to do, and we do it so well here, is to be in the business of preparing great educators. That is not the case at many Research One universities around the country, and they gave us that opportunity. Well, little did I know that in the audience of 30 to 40 our top supporters, among them was Ray Neag, an alum and successful businessman. A few years before, he endowed the Ray and Lynn Neag Chair in Gifted Education and also gave an endowment to establish the Neag Center for Gifted and Talented. Little did I know that day in January, my life and the life of everyone in the school would change. About a year later, on a snowy February day in 1999, we would be in the state capitol, actually in John Rowland's office, remember that, Ray? Announcing the largest gift ever given a school of education and the largest gift ever given to a public university in New England. $21 million matched by $3 million in state money. I was also quite not the most popular dean early on. Because of Ray's generosity, we got almost all of the match money before they stopped giving out the match money. So it was one of those great opportunities because Ray stepped forward so early while the state was still matching on I think it was a 1-for-1 basis, and then it went to a 50-cent on the dollar basis. We were able to get at that time initially a $3 million bump early on, and then the state ended that, unfortunately, but we were there, which was great. From that day forward, the School of Education, which was established in 1940, which means next year we celebrate our 75th anniversary, would be known as the Neag School of Education. 6 months later, we sat in Jorgensen Auditorium on September 24th, 1999, and celebrated the naming of the school. So what did we promise that day? I got to tell you, I got a little nervous because I said, well, what should I do? I should go back and pull out the archives like a good historian. And I read the articles in the New York Times and in the Wall Street Journal. We did say to Ray, if he made a gift like this, that it would not just change the University of Connecticut, it would change the landscape across the country. And it has. Jonathan Plucker last night reminded me that I had told him, and I said this at the time, money wasn't given to schools of education. This really was the first gift. Since that time, other deans have used this to get gifts, I think some of them up to $100 million for their school. All because Ray broke the ground. Ray and Carole broke that ground for us. So what did I do? I started sweating a little bit because, you know, Scott Brown always says you should, under-promise and over-deliver. And I think I was worried, oh God, I always over-promise. And I hope do the best I can to deliver, but my wife will tell you if I deliver all the time on that. So I went back and looked at the archives and said, well, what are we going to promise? So the first thing I told Ray, and I believe this with all my heart and soul, is that great universities are not about administrators, they're not about buildings, they're not about great yards, they're about faculty. And I said the first thing we have to do is invest in intellectual capital. That means we've got to attract the brightest and best professors around the country. We already have a number of them already here. But if we can do that, we can continue to make this a great place and make it even better. So that was our first promise. I also said at that time, and I look back, I said my two top priorities were already strong and gifted and talented. We're already strong in measurement. Right now, our country is in a crisis in the area of literacy. And also, as we have these new emerging technologies, literacy is going to change. So we made the first in the country endowed professorship in literacy and technology back in '99. And then I said the second huge problem we have is you talk to any teacher, and they say if we can get kids to behave, and if we can get kids to work well together, that we can teach a lot better. So our second targeted professorship at that time was a professorship in behavior disorders. The second thing I promised back then is we would support the brightest and best students to become teachers, leaders in reform, school counselors for Connecticut and the nation. Fourth, we would raise the national rankings to become one of the top schools of education in the nation. So let's see what the return on the investment is from Ray and Carole's gift. Intellectual capital. Since our first investment in our first investment in the year 2000 was to recruit Don Liu from Syracuse University as the John and Maria Neag Endowed Chair of Literacy and Technology, aptly named after Ray's mom and dad. At the time, as I said, it was the first chair of its type in the nation. Over the years, Dr. Liu has been the PI for more than $10 million in research grant funding and a participant in research grant funding that totals over $50 million. His work shows our nation has an additional and separate income achievement gap for online reading based on income inequality. Think about this. we've always looked at the achievement gap of literacy and numeracy, but today's students get most of their information off the net. His work actually showed that there was a year difference between an upper income and a middle income community. Imagine what that would be between an upper and a lower end community, and I know there's more work that's going to be done in that area. Likewise, 5 years later, in 2005, we recruited George Sugai for the Carole J. Neag Endowed Chair in Behavior Disorders. George started the Center for Behavior and Education Research, and since 2006, CBER has generated more than $26 million in grants focused on academic and social behavior research and early literacy interventions, bullying behavior prevention, school climate and school safety prevention systems. George has sat next to the First Lady on special White House panel on bullying, and he and his CBER team have testified before Congress, before the Senate. They have influenced legislature at state level, at the federal level, and even influenced in policy on the international level. In addition, we use Neag funds to support superstars who are already here and gifted and talented, working with gifted and talented students. Joe Renzulli, the Ray and Lynn Neag Chair of Gifted and Talented Education, was our first endowed chair, which was awarded in 1996. In a way, Joe was a test case to show what an investment in intellectual capital can do for a school. Joe had already achieved international status when he got this chair. This chair even allowed him more impact and the ability to bring in more people to work with. Joe has brought in himself over $70 million in grants and contracts in his career to UConn. Published countless books and articles, designed and developed the school enrichment model with co-author Sally Reese, which is used in thousands of schools worldwide. He also has now places called Renzulli Academies, which are fabulous places operating not only here in New York, but in Washington, D.C., and was featured in the Washington Post recently about the work that he's done this week. Actually, Joe has so many honors, we'd be here till 4 o'clock this afternoon if I said them all. But one of the most prized for any educator is the McGraw-Hill Prize in Education, and I was honored to be in New York when Joe was awarded that prize. Similarly, Sally Reese became the Letitia Neag Morgan Chair in Educational Psychology in 2010 from funds from Ray and Carole. These were additional funds that they provided. Sally is known far and wide as one of the world's top experts on issues relating to talent development. She is author of more than 250 articles and books on gifted education, focusing on such important issues as literacy, women's education, and how to top the talent of all children, regardless of their socioeconomic, racial, or ethnic backgrounds. She co-founded Confratute, and I was at Confratute as a brand new professor years and years ago. She founded that in, I believe, 1980, and that summer program has served more than 35,000 teachers from all over the world and generated more than $30 million for the school. She now, believe it or not, I don't know how she does it, continues to publish and be an active scholar as the vice provost, working with Provost Choi of the university. All in all, and I said this yesterday, this is amazing. I added up the numbers, $150 million between just those four. Think of the impact and the jobs that this has created just from the economic perspective. Forget about all the other lasting effects. As I said earlier, last night we had an investiture for 3 more endowed professors and 1 UConn Board of Trustee Distinguished University Professor. You will get a chance to hear from them soon. I think they know the bar has been set high, but I have a lot of faith in this group that they're going to, again, set the bar even higher for the next generation. I said this last night, I want to repeat it. While it's important to understand the impact of individuals mentioned, it is too important to understand that the Neag stature over the years has been due to the hard work of all faculty and staff, those that we have here and our emeriti that joined us today. Our faculty have grown from about 50 at the time of the naming to over 80 today. Our faculty is a healthy blend of new talent and established faculty that are all distinguished in their fields. I believe a faculty, like I said last night, is like a great symphony. You can't have all faculty playing the same instruments. Our school cannot prosper without people who make our partnerships work and work day to day in schools, translating research into practice, in our most challenging environments. It wouldn't work if they didn't serve. A university can't have self-governance if people don't do the heavy lifting of serving on committees, though you often don't get merit or accolades for doing that kind of work. We aren't going to be a great university if we don't spend all that extra time advising and working with our students and setting the standard. The Neag School of Education, I am very proud, has the highest teaching ratings, student evaluations on campus by far. Very proud of the teaching of our faculty. We have used Neag funds to support that work as well. For example, Neag funds provide resources to recruit the top new talent nationwide. The past few weeks, it has helped support the work of Professors Marcus and Glenn, who I just welcomed. They had a room full of prospective teachers, and they were doing a whole day institute on teaching the Holocaust through literature and through the study of history. It supported seminars for visiting scholars from the University of Glasgow, the University of Nottingham, and a consortium of German universities who are all coming here, interested in trying to do what we've done in the Neag School and looking to establish international partnerships. And we are going to become a more global university and global school of education over the next few years. So Promise 2, I think we hit Promise 1 on intellectual capital development. Promise 2 is our students. Since the naming gift, we have expanded our teacher education program by 60%, still placing almost 100% of those students, which is double the national average. The national average is about 50%. We also retain those great teachers, because national average is, I think, half of those teachers leave after a period of time, and our retention rate is well into the 90%. We've created new programs in school counseling and educational leadership. We've dispersed more than $1.5 million in scholarship support from Neag funds and from other donors who have joined us. We have gone from giving out 25 scholarships when I started to last year giving out over 175. In fact, we gave more scholarship funds out of donors who joined us after Ray and Carole made their gift. And this is something that Ray said, I hope this inspires others. It's actually much bigger now from other people who have joined in than even with the generosity of the Neag scholars, which I'll talk a little bit in a second about. So, at that time of the naming ceremony, I asked all the students in the room to stand, and they all had t-shirts on at the time, get the t-shirt kind of thing again. I want to ask that we try that again. So I just want Ray and Carole to see the students that are in this room that are giving up a Saturday, beautiful Saturday morning to come here to honor Ray and Carole and to be part of the Neag family. Will you guys stand up just for a second here? Last time I got to say that in this room in front of Ray and Carole, I said, these folks are going to go change the world. And then every year afterwards, those folks are going to change the world. And they're going to change the world every year from 25 to 130 students. So Casey Cobb and I were at a national dean's meeting, and we were bored to death. And I gave him a math problem. And so we spent an hour calculating the number of students Neag School of Education graduates have influenced. And so we did the math and we came up and we compared numbers. We were 10,000 off. I had 266,000, he had 278,000 students. Just think of that, what your generosity has touched and how that's reached. That's not counting these guys that are going to go out next year. That's not counting all the principals from our new programs or school counselors or all the other professionals that we have, school psychologists and superintendents that we've graduated. So, not only have they impacted generations, they have accomplished many great things. They have landed professorships at places like the University of California, Berkeley, the University of Kentucky, the University of Rhode Island, Portland State University, University of Utah, University of Illinois at Chicago, and in fact, Dr. Kim Lawless, where's Kim? Has joined us today. She's the Associate Dean at the University of Illinois, Chicago. All great universities, and I just said a few. There are a heck of a lot more, but also Connecticut. In Connecticut, we have faculty members at Southern, University of New Haven, University of Hartford, and at Central Connecticut State University. Mike Alfano, who is the dean, was a grad student when I started in '97. So he actually was here and part of the Neag naming and directed our teacher ed program after that. He's the dean now. Young guy to be dean. The Neag scholars, those that you've given scholarships to, are over 500 students. They've gone on to achieve great things. We have 22 Neag scholars who have gone on to win Teacher of the Year, 3 assistant principals of the year, 2 superintendents of the year, 2 counselors of the year. We didn't get the principal numbers. This is all what we could pull from self-reported data on our accolades page, not from ones that we could actually go do research, so I'm easily double that. Just this year in Connecticut, we have the Connecticut Teacher of the Year, Kara Quinn, the Connecticut Superintendent of the Year, Dr. Janet Robinson. In fact, we have a lot of former superintendents in the year. Bob Villanova, who's in here, was a former superintendent of the year. We grabbed him back. Where's Bob? Right there. We grabbed him back to head up our executive leadership program, and he's preparing the next generation of school superintendents. Fairfax County is the wealthiest school district in the country. We only have a few teachers who go down there and want to teach in the Washington, D.C. area. In the last few years, 2 of the first-year teachers of the year in that big district were Neag grads. Christine Atanasio, Connecticut Latina Citizen of the Year, was just recognized. Dr. Nivea Torres, Connecticut School Counselor of the Year, and, I apologize for that. Fairfax County First Teacher of the Year was Christine Atanasio, and the Latina Citizen of the Year, Dr. Nivea Torres, is a Neag School of Education graduate. That was just announced. And the School Counselor of the Year last year was Vanessa Montorsi, and a special one for me that I want to talk about right now is the Milken Award winner. Desi Nesbitt, who started out as a work-study student in 1997 and was here during the first year, and here was during that celebration, is one of the first Neag-funded grad students in our program. This year won the Milken Award, one of the highest awards given out in the United States and the only one given out in Connecticut. We are very, very proud of Desi, and I think he's right over there, trying to hide up there in the back row. Promise 3, raise the money for new and renovated facilities. With the support of campus leadership and generous support from the state of Connecticut, we built a new addition in 2002-04 and 2009 finished renovating the building. When I started, UConn 2000, 21st Century University didn't have $1 in it for renovating the building. But when they saw Ray's generosity, they said we had to give you the building that you deserve. So rankings is the 4th promise. The Neag School is tied for the #1 ranked public graduate school of education in the Northeast with Penn State. It's ranked 24th nationally as the public graduate school of education in the country. Our special ed programs among all programs in the country was ranked 12th. Educational psychology 16th. Secondary teacher education 18th. Without question, though they don't give rankings for this, we are the top place in the world for gifted, talented, and creativity, as evidenced by the federal government funding us again for the National Research Center on research on gifted education. But we're not done yet. Guided by our strategic plan and UConn's strategic plan, we are moving forward to continue our work as world-renowned scholars in the areas of social justice, talent development, creativity and innovation, educator quality, and STEM education. We are pursuing federal and state grants to continue and expand our work and have launched a comprehensive recruiting plan to bring the top doctoral students in the world. And I think we have advertisements for that for any of you teachers that are tempted to come back and get your PhDs. In addition, our top fundraising priority to take us to the next level is funding graduate student support. It's one thing to recruit the best, but we must support and retain the best and most talented. The fastest growing debt load in this nation is at the graduate level. Graduate students are the next generation of scholars and activists who will continue the fight for creating a just and prosperous society. We have ambitious goals to raise $10 million to support graduate research assistants who can work alongside our talented faculty in win-win situations. Students get to work on some of the most critical issues facing our nation with some of the most accomplished faculty in the world, and the other part is the win is that faculty get the needed support to conduct their research. We are reallocating funds to kick off what I hope is a program that will grow, the Dean's Doctoral Scholars, where students are guaranteed support for 4 years of a PhD program to work on strategic areas of research. If we are going to compete with the top schools, University of Berkeley, University of Pennsylvania, Stanford, and Harvard, we have to, not only to stay competitive, but to do the right thing. In closing, the future is bright. I can envision that at the 100th anniversary, and the Neag School is the #1 intergalactic school of education. The dean will say, look at what a wonderful ROI that the generosity in Ray and Carole Neag has accomplished. Ray and Carole, I always get choked up at this part, because I've had the opportunity to thank them a number of times because they're so generous. They keep giving. I don't know how to begin to thank you for all you've done for the Neag School of Education and our Neag School of Education family, and we really are different in that way. We are a family. Let alone all you've done for our medical school and cancer research here on campus. In your unselfish giving in such areas as substance abuse and prevention and cure that you've been recognized for. Alumni, friends, student and faculty, all those in the Neag School of Education, please join me in expressing your thanks to Ray and Carole. Now it's time for our keynote speaker. In selecting the keynote speaker for this event, we could have repeated what we did before when we had the naming event and bring in a world-renowned author like Jonathan Kozol or world-renowned educational journalists like Claudio Sanchez from NPR or Ethan Bronner from the New York Times like we did last time. Instead, I wanted to bring in one of our own. Someone who graduated from the Neag School and personified what we stand for as faculty and Neag family, so that Ray and Carole can see the benefits of their generosity. We have many individuals who have gone on to do great things, but today our speaker stands out as someone who we selected for speak for them and for us. After hearing Caitlin Roig DeBella speak at our commencement last year, I knew we would be asking for an encore. In 2006, I handed Caitlin her second UConn degree with 120 of her IBM colleagues. That's not that long ago. That fall, she began her career as a reading specialist in Westport, Connecticut. In the fall of 2007, she landed her dream job as a first-grade teacher in Sandy Hook Elementary School. We don't need to retell the horrific events of December 14th, 2012. We all know how this gifted teacher heard gunfire and immediately raced her 15 students out of sight into a bathroom. She virtually stacked them one on top of another, told them they must be quiet, and did what a gifted teacher does. Kept on her professional hat, a hat that says "Students First" on the brim. She proceeded to keep the students calm, protective of each other, and safely back in their parents' arms. Roig returned to teaching the same students she sheltered through that tragedy. In 2013, she was granted a leave of absence to pursue a passion that grew out of the aftermath of that tragedy. This is a quote from her: "Something that grew out of that day, that the world, not just our nation, but the world, was sending things to our school and to my class specifically, and my kids had everything. Teddy bear, cupcakes," she said, and I said, "I need to take this time to teach my students that when you get, you also have to give, because that's what ultimately makes our world a better place." As an outcome of her experience, she decided to create a human lesson. She started a new organization to give back to the community, a website called Classes for Classes. The goal of the organization is to teach every child in America to have a genuine interest in the well-being of others by providing a flat platform through which to actively engage them in a social curriculum. By allowing students to choose whom they want to help and how, Classes for Classes gives every class the opportunity to help. While she has received lots of accolades, Glamour magazine named her one of the Women of the Year, and President Obama called her a heroine in front of the world as she sat next to the First Lady in the State of the Union address. Our accolades mean the most to us. Caitlin is a teacher every parent would love their child to have. And last night she received the University of Connecticut Alumni Association Humanitarian Award, which I think trumps presidential recognition in my mind any day. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you very much, Dean Schwab. Good morning, Neag family, students, alumni, faculty, board members, Mr. and Mrs. Neag. I cannot tell you how honored and grateful I am to be here celebrating the Neag School's 15-year anniversary. I graduated from this prestigious school 9 years ago. The Neag School gave me the firm foundation and the confidence to be the best possible educator I could be. I am forever grateful to the Neag School, and I am extremely proud to call myself an alum. Last night, as Dean Schwab said, I received the university's Humanitarian Award, and I know that I owe a large part of that to the Neag School. I chose to be a teacher at the age of 5. At the age of 19, the Neag School chose me as a student. I could not be more proud of both choices. Choice is crucial at so many different times of our lives. It seems fitting then, on a day of celebrating the successes of the Neag School over the past 15 years, to choose to talk about the choices that Neag allowed me, as well as all of its students, to make. The Neag School helps each of its students to make the daily choices that we each have to make as educators. This morning, I want to share with you 4 key components that I have found crucial in my life. They each revolve around choice. Choosing your purpose, knowing it, following it. Choosing your perspective of how to view the world around you. Choosing to always overcome your own hard times and choosing hope within them. Life is all about choice. In sharing these key components, I share a piece of my story. My story as a teacher, as a learner, as a leader, my story as a survivor. I share it with you today because I know that it will make a difference in how you view each minute, each moment, each day, when you are truly aware that your life can change in an instant. I share it with you because in life we each have a very definite purpose. My story today is one of an educator. It is who I have always been at my core. Before high school or college, I knew my passion and my purpose was to work with students, to ensure and enable their success. This knowledge guided me in every choice and decision that I made. We each have goals and ambitions at our core, and it is of the utmost importance that we strive to define them, for it is only then that we are able to actively pursue them. Choosing your purpose. We each come to define our purpose when we answer these questions. Who are we? What are our goals, desires, ambitions? What is it that we wish to become? Following the events of December 14th, 2012, I was left reeling, left searching for both purpose and meaning for my students as well as for myself. How would we regain control? How would we redefine ourselves? I stand before you today as a first grade teacher. As someone who has taught for 9 years, 7 in the traditional classroom setting, and 2 across the United States and Canada, working with administrators, school boards, teachers, and students. What's at the core of this and what you must know is that my purpose was clear from the age of 5. At the age of 10, I became a mother's helper, and then a babysitter, a nanny, a camp counselor monitor. You get the picture. I had every job imaginable working with children until at long last I became a classroom teacher. I want to share with you what my purpose has always meant to me. Being a teacher means giving of yourself to your students. It means making someone else's life richer. As teachers, we are aware that it is the first of our jobs in a long list of titles. We are our students' support, their educator, their mentor, at times, even their parent. More importantly, though, we are happy to be each of these things, to wear each of these hats. We welcome the responsibility with open arms. As teachers, we are the difference makers in our students' lives. We intervene when 2 of our students aren't seeing eye to eye. We enable a student struggling with self-image to find something to feel good and confident about. We build a caring community in our classrooms where everyone feels safe and welcome and part of the team. We are the difference makers. We go into education because we are acutely aware that impacting and influencing even just one life a year is an overwhelmingly powerful gift. As teachers, we are also role models for our students. Our students will decide that they love coming to school every day because of our modeling. Ultimately, our students may decide that they too wish to become teachers because of our expertise and passion. Being a teacher is a gift, and as teachers, it is a gift that we give every single day. The gift, of course, is twofold. While we give many gifts to our students, they give back tenfold. When a student hands you a homemade card, daisies that they've just picked out of their garden, or a homemade Teacher of the Year award, it is we as their teachers who receive those gifts. When a student finally does something for the very first time, learns to spell that tricky spelling word or read that chapter book they've been struggling with all year, it is we as their teachers who receive those gifts. It reminds me of one of my favorite sayings: the gift is truly in the giving. I was recently asked a few months ago, what would the world be like without teachers? I want you to think about that for a second. What would the world be like without teachers? Without hesitation, I replied, it wouldn't work. Teachers, you see, are the common denominator in our world. Everyone starts in school. You, me, doctors, lawyers, businessmen and women, the President of the United States started in school. And it was teachers who enabled their dreams to come to fruition. Teachers are, in fact, why the world works. I always knew that this was my dream. My childhood dream did become a reality, and my story may be quite similar to yours. Choosing your perspective. I was born on October 31st, 1983. Although being that I am adopted, I did not meet my parents until nearly 2 months later on December 23rd, or Kate's Day, as my parents aptly named it. My parents awoke filled with so much excitement and enthusiasm to pick up their little girl whom they had waited for so long. And yet upon waking, they found that my dad's mother, who lived with them at the time, had passed away in her sleep. A completely tragic morning. And yet, the morning that they were becoming parents, a moment they had waited for so long. They left to pick me up. My father reflects that upon bringing me home, they sat on the couch, passing me back and forth, and crying. They asked one another, are these tears of joy or are they tears of sadness? They answered one another honestly. They are both. I choose to begin my story here with you today because the day I went home with my parents is a true example of the balance found in life. There are highs and lows. There is good and bad. Both are always present. In any one day, in any one moment, you always have both. Of course, at times, life is weighted more heavily to one end, but both are always present. I have always considered being adopted as one of my greatest gifts. We know that the greatest gifts in life are not objects, things, or possessions. Someone, somewhere, knew that I would have a better life and selflessly gave me up so that I may have it. This was always the way I viewed being adopted, as the most positive thing. Perspective is amazingly powerful. Outlook determines how we react or not to every situation in our lives. We have the choice. We alone hold the power. We can choose to focus on the good, on the abundant good that is all around. For having this perspective will make the hard times, the bumps in the road, the hiccups, so to speak, feel that much more approachable. It will make the impossible feel possible. I am grateful that I learned this lesson on perspective at a very early age, for it truly shaped my outlook. My parents provided me with all the love, care, and support in the world. From a young age, I knew how blessed I was, and I was very grateful. My parents taught me 2 lessons that I carry with me to this day. First, they taught me that we each have many gifts to give, and it is our responsibility to give them. Second, they taught me that everyone has a story. Everyone came from somewhere. Everyone has a different perspective. And we need to be really good listeners in order to hear one another's. My story of wanting to be a teacher begins at the age of 5. I was always so curious about the other children I saw at the mall, the movies, the park. I remember at 5, very seriously asking my father if he thought I could babysit for the little boy next door. He was 3. When my father replied that this would not be a good idea, I truly did not understand. I persisted with similar requests over the next few years, much to no avail. What's at the heart of this is I knew my purpose. I knew it, and I wanted to follow it. Finally, at the age of 10, they said, okay, you can now babysit for him, and I did. I grew up likely just like you. The desire we have at 5 and 6 and 7 to become adults, to grow up, to be just like our parents. For some, it's a toy kitchen and playing chef. For others, it's a race car and playing race car driver. For myself, that acting out meant rows and rows of my stuffed animals or neighborhood friends, if I was truly lucky, sitting in front of me, letting me teach them all different things. There were days where I'd line them up and hand out notebooks, and we would practice spelling words. On others, we'd write short stories. And on others, I'd pile them all around, and I'd read them one of my favorite stories. Always modeling myself after my own teachers, after their expertise and enthusiasm. That's the power we have as educators, to impact and influence our students in ways that go far beyond the classroom, in ways we never even imagined. One of those teachers stands out in my mind. It was the 5th grade. Her name was Mrs. B. She was the teacher who lit that fire under me. She made me want to be exactly like her when I grew up. She inspired, she motivated, and she did so with such ease and poise. It was very clear that her classroom was one where we could feel safe sharing and taking a risk, and she encouraged us to do so. She read us amazing literature, and she posed thought-provoking questions. She got to know us, and she genuinely cared about our interests in the way that if you had a conversation with her on one day, she'd come back over a week later, kneel down, and say, you know, I've been thinking a lot about, and here is what I think you should do. She genuinely cared. That's the kind of teacher I want to be, I remember thinking. I continued modeling myself after Mrs. B and the other incredible teachers I had throughout my youth and adolescence until, at long last, at the age of 17, it was time to leave for the University of Connecticut. I could not have been more thrilled to finally get my teaching career started. I arrived here at the university knowing that I wanted to apply to the prestigious Neag School. So I threw myself into my studies. I spent countless hours at Homer Babbage. It was my second home. I began working at the UConn Child Labs. I was a mentor and reading buddy for inner city students in Hartford. And finally, at long last, as a sophomore, I was accepted into the Neag School. I began immediately taking courses in curriculum and instruction, educational technology, child psychology. I began tutoring athletes and being a study hall monitor. Persistence is key in meeting any goal. If you keep your goal at your forefront, if you keep moving forward, you will always be met with success, for you will always end up farther than from where you started. Always persevere. My perseverance paid off. It was the choices and decisions that I had made that allowed my childhood dream to come true at the age of 21. I graduated with my master's degree in education, and I was hired as a first grade teacher. My first year teaching was everything I imagined it to be and more. As all first year teachers know, I spent the month of August busily preparing my classroom. I hung birthday charts and bus lists, bright and vibrant posters. I organized our classroom library. I wanted everyone who entered our classroom to feel as warm and welcome as I did. The end of August arrived. Miss Roig, room 12, hung on the plaque outside the door. I could not have been more proud. 18 first graders filed into our classroom. I don't know who was more excited, them or me. We spent our first day learning the routines of our classroom and our school. We learned each other's names. We shared about our summers. We ate lunch in the cafeteria for the very first time. It was official. We were a class, and it was even more amazing than I ever could have imagined. The thing about first grade is it is a year of firsts. Your students are experiencing everything very much for the first time, and as their teacher, you get to experience it with them through their eyes, the wonder, the excitement at the most mundane of lessons. I spent my next 7 years gaining a myriad of teaching experiences. I did as we as educators do. I kept learning and growing so that I could better serve my students and do my job. I began my 7th year teaching happier than I had ever been. I had just gotten engaged, and life and its possibilities seemed truly endless. The year was passing rapidly, filled with so much excitement and anticipation. Anyone who has been engaged to marry the love of your life, or will be, knows that it is a daily countdown. 320, 245, 198, and yes, I was that girl. On December 14th, 2012, that countdown came to a screeching halt. Choosing to overcome. That morning, I awoke ready to tackle the day. It was Friday, and the weekend lay in front of me. As I hurried to leave, something stopped me in my tracks, and I put down my gym bag, my lunch, my keys. I grabbed my phone, and I walked over to the slider, pausing in awe of the beauty of the sunrise over the water. I snapped a picture of that beautiful sight. I posted it to Facebook. Filled with more of a sense of peace and calm, I rushed out the door. Not even 3 hours later, my sense of peace, calm, and happiness was forever changed. As my students and I sat in morning meeting, greeting one another as we do every day, we had just finished listening to Oklahoma's version of Oh, What a Beautiful Morning. Loud, rapid-fire shots began. As my classroom is the first in the school, I knew immediately that what I was hearing was a weapon, shattering large glass panes, bringing terror, pain, sadness, and immeasurable loss to a school full of light and love. The possibility that our lives can change in an instant is, of course, always there. Knowing this, there are 2 things to take away. 1, you must live your life in a way every day so that if you were confronted with your last moment, you would feel as well as possible about the choices and decisions you had made. 2, you are the one who holds the power of how to react to those unexpected moments. You can choose to react with anger, resentment, and hate, or you can choose to react with love, compassion, and empathy. Whichever choice you make will set your course moving forward. I knew something very evil was in imminent proximity of my students and myself. Time was of the essence. I immediately got up, closed the door, turned the lights off. My keys were clear across the room, and there was not the moments to get them. The door to our classroom remained unlocked. I turned to my students and I said, "We need to get into our bathroom right now." At first, they began to protest. How? Why? What do you mean? My students were in protest because what I was asking them to do must have sounded impossible. As an adult, it seemed impossible. Our classroom bathroom was no larger than this table right here, and 16 of us crammed in with a toilet in the center. In that moment, the decision that I had made for us to survive far outweighed how unreasonable it seemed for us to fit. The impossible needed to become possible. And so we crammed in, we closed the door, we locked it, and we waited. There is no need for me to go into those 45 minutes to what we heard, what we felt, what we experienced. But I will assure you, it was the most scary thing I think you could ever experience. Eventually, after 45 minutes, a knock came. At first, I thought it was the gunman, so I whispered to a student to ask who was there. My student did immediately, and as you would to a 6 or 7-year-old, the voice said, "Hey, little buddy, we're here to help. Please unlock the door. It's the police." At this point, I spoke and said, "If you're the police, I need your badge," to which they immediately slipped it under the door. As I held it in my hand, I could not believe, not after all the evil we had heard. I said, "This does not look real. I do not believe you. If you are really the police, you would have the keys. You'd be able to unlock this door." They did have the master keys, and they tried 7, 8, 9 different ones, and the door unlocked. They pulled us one at a time as we were squished like sardines out of the bathroom, able to feel the cool air, able to say, "Thank you." Our journey did not end in that bathroom. We are, in fact, on the other side. I will always hold on to that moment. In the weeks following, there was a lot of time spent finding a new normal. At first, I surrounded myself with friends and loved ones, fearing that in their absence, the pain would be insurmountable. Eventually, as fewer and fewer friends were able to be around as we each must live our own lives, it was my fiance, my rock, who stood by my side. I could not go in public, not a grocery store, not a gas station. I couldn't be in the dark. I had to shower with the door open. It was infuriating. On December 13th, I had been the most independent person. My sense of safety, security, my sense of self were taken. They were gone. I was walking around in a daze. I kept asking why, repeatedly. Why? Why our school? Why those lives? Why did this happen? Eventually, after living like this for a week or two, I had a moment where I realized that this was not a way to live. If I was going to live this way, wasn't living at all. And so I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice that I was never going to answer those whys. Not then, not now, not ever. And when I came to that realization, I had to focus on questions that I could answer. Sometimes in life, we focus so long on the questions that can't be answered that we forget there are a lot of questions that can. And so for myself, I had to dig deep within, and I had to think about the questions that I knew I needed to answer. There were 2. The first was, how do I make sure this day does not define myself or my students? The second was, how do we get our control back? It had been taken from us. How would we get it back? Those 2 questions I knew I could answer, and I knew I had to answer them. At that point, I still had a large question to answer, and that was how. It's a very interesting thing after enduring a tragedy, a trauma, a hard time. Time doesn't change it, doesn't diminish it, just puts space between you and it. It's there, it's constant. All one can do is to make a choice to focus on the abundant good that is also all around. Is the glass half full or half empty? Do you curse the rain or praise it for bringing you beautiful flowers? Do you yearn for the grass on the other side of the fence or instead appreciate the grass under your own 2 feet? Optimism is a choice. I knew my students and I had to make a choice. If we were going to choose in the face of evil to focus on love, compassion, empathy, then I, as their teacher, needed to find a way to teach this to them. I still had a large question to answer, though, and that was how. We returned to our new school on January 2nd. I was filled with mixed emotions. There was such a deep void. One of the most uplifting aspects of being back at school, next to seeing the joy on my students' smiling faces, was the outpouring of love and support from around the world. Boxes of things came in to our school and into my classroom. My kids had Happy Meals, Crumbs cupcakes, teddy bears, recess toys, pencils, books, you name it, my kids had it. And while they were beyond deserving of all of these special gifts, I knew as their teacher I needed to take the teachable moment. I needed to teach my students that in life, when you get, you have to give. And in life, when somebody does something nice for you, it is your responsibility to do nice for someone else. And so one day, I brought a large box in front of my students just before recess time. I started pulling items out, telling them that these were for us to use at recess that day. Of course, their eyes grew wide and they were so excited. I asked them, why did someone do this for us? Immediately their hands raised. They wanted to be nice, they wanted to be kind, they wanted us to have fun at recess today. You are absolutely correct, I said. Somebody did this for us for all of those reasons. And do you know what you're supposed to do in life when somebody does something nice for you? Immediately their hands raised again. Yes, we should do something nice for someone else. Yes, we should help someone else. We should give someone things to make them feel happy like we do now. I said, you're absolutely correct. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to find a class somewhere in the United States. And because we've been given so many things, we're going to give back. We're going to give to someone else. And the most amazing thing happened. Their hands shot up once again. Who are we going to help? How are we going to help them? What are we going to give? Can we mail them these recess toys? They were more excited about the prospect of giving to someone else than they were of receiving. It was a light bulb moment that day. It was a light bulb moment that kids need to experience freely giving. That giving is better than receiving, and that we as their teachers simply need to give them the opportunity to do so. Our class was the first class to reach out to a class in Tennessee. We mailed them a Mimeo Teach. They were very grateful. That class then reached out to a class in Arizona and mailed them whiteboards, markers, and erasers. Those were the initial 3 projects of Classes for Classes. We launched in January 2013. Since we have been in 10 states, we've worked with over 1,000 students, and we've been endorsed by multiple organizations, including the National PTA. Our goal in 2015 is to be in the other 40 states, for there is no reason why we can't be. As an educator, I have always been very aware that teaching a social curriculum is of the utmost importance. However, as a teacher with limited hours in a school day, I've always found it difficult to find genuine ways to actively engage my students in learning these principles. So many times it would be reading a touch-tone text, talking about how the character was kind, and then talking about how my students were each kind with starter sentences. Very basic, very surface. They were never truly actively engaged in the doing, in the learning to be kind, in the learning to be empathetic. So now here we were. My students and I had just been confronted by the greatest evil the world has ever seen. But yet, in the face of it, not even a month later, we were confronted by abundant good. More good, more love, more hope came into our school than I can even tell you. And we had a choice. We chose hope. It may seem so obvious to us as adults, social curriculum. Well, of course kids know how to be kind. Of course kids know how to be a good friend. But if we think back to some of the most basic lessons that we've each learned, 1 + 1 = 2. The letter C comes before the letter D. As a first grade teacher, I would never assume that my students came to me knowing those things. I assess if they know the alphabet. I assess if they know their numbers 1 through 20. And if they don't, I fill in the gaps. It is the same with a social curriculum. When it comes down to it, teaching a social curriculum is making sure our students are aware. aware of what makes us different, and aware of what unites us as one, and being accepting of both. It's seeing another child on the playground all alone and understanding immediately that that student is feeling lonely. Being able to empathize and say, lonely is not a good feeling. I've felt that before. I need to go over there. I need to ask how that student is doing. I need to ask if that student would like to talk, if that student would like to play. In our society, we seem to think that's the nice thing to do. That's not the nice thing to do. That is our responsibility, for in life we are all connected. And the moment one person feels lonely is the moment we are disconnected. It starts in morning meeting with a greeting, a kind word. It starts there and it is infused throughout the school day. It is a team-building activity. It is writing a class book where everyone contributes a page. It's working towards the greater good in your classroom, your school, and your community. We firmly believe that when we teach kindness, compassion, empathy, there is not room for hate. As I look to the future, I am filled with many feelings, the greatest of which is hope. Hope is the reason we get out of bed in the morning. It's the reason we're all here today. Hope is the reason we embark on any task, job, or mission. We take on a home improvement project because we hope it will make our home more welcoming. We decide to volunteer each week because we hope we can make the difference. We decide to become educators because we hope we can ensure our students' success. Hope is the driving force. I hope for a healthy and happy life for my husband we wed last August. I hope to continue working with children across the United States. I hope that Classes for Classes is in all 50 states, in every single classroom. There are times in each of our lives that we must rely on hope alone. As is in one of my favorite childhood stories of Mice and Men, the best laid plans can often falter. I could have never planned for the events of December 14th, and after which found myself on a very new path with no plan. We will each meet times in our lives that were not in our plan, where our path takes an unexpected turn. When that happened for me 23 months ago, I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice that that day wasn't going to define me or my students. I had to make a choice that we would get our control back. I had to make a choice that I was going to attempt to change the way we think about teaching kids to care about one another. Over the course of the past 23 months, I have had the honor and privilege of meeting with some truly remarkable and esteemed people, and I want to share just a few of their names with you now for a very important reason. President Obama, President Clinton, First Lady Michelle Obama, Senator John McCain, Ariana Huffington, Secretary of Education Arne Duncan, Diane Sawyer, Anderson Cooper. I share just a few of these names with you to illustrate a point. I am an ordinary person. I am a first grade teacher. I am a wife. I am a runner. I am a daughter. I am someone who had to make a choice to overcome what could have been insurmountable. We each have that choice in our lives. I would encourage anyone, choose your purpose, know it, follow it, work hard at it. Choose to have a positive perspective of the way you view the world around you. Choose to always overcome your own hard times and always choose hope within them. Life is all about choice, and the choice is ours alone to make. I am so proud and so grateful to be a Neag alum and to be here celebrating 15 incredible years. Thank you for choosing me as a student. From the bottom of my heart, have a great day.